All right, and welcome to the first episode of Butler's Babble. What is Butler's Babble? Well, we're here. We're going to try and empower you. We're going to try and motivate you, inspire you so that you can have the best lives possible. And to do that, we're going to bring on guests every month that have been through something in their life that's somehow got them depressed or they've gotten down in their luck somehow, whether it be financially, it could have been emotionally, mentally. And we're going to see how they got through that and came out on the other side and became successful in something in their life, because we all are going through that, especially in the last 2 years. So tonight's guest, you're really going to love. I've known her for, I think we worked out, it was about 25 years now. We met a while ago back. So I know you're going to enjoy having a listen to what she's got to say. Before we start, I just want to do a little house cleaning. If you've never been on a podcast with StreamYard before, which is the form that we're using. If you want to leave a comment, by all means, you can leave a comment in the comment section there, or even a question for Kerrie. If you have a question for them, leave the question there. But if you can go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give them permission to use your name, we'll actually see who's actually leaving the comments there, and we can bring it up and we can ask Kerrie the questions as we go. So I'm not going to sit here babbling on too much, even though it is called the Butler's Babble, and I'm going to bring on our host here. But before I do, let me let you know a little bit about Kerrie. Kerry Lee Brown, she's a mother, she's a wife, she's a sister, and we met back in the 90s, back when we both worked at a bodybuilding fitness magazine. She's a very, very, very talented journalist and very highly sought on a lot of magazines. She's written for countless of magazines, and I'll let her tell you all about them. But she did have a little issue that happened back at when she was around 39, and we're going to get into that. But let's bring Kerrie on, and this is Kerry Lee Brown. So let's bring her in, if we can. Add the stream. There we go. There she is.
Hey, John.
Welcome to the show, Kerrie.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. Your first episode. I'm honored. Thank you.
And I knew as soon as I've been planning this for a long time, and I knew I've been telling my wife the whole time and a lot of friends, as soon as I get this going, the logistics going, Kerrie's my first guest, because I knew you had a good story to tell, and we've known each other. I can't believe it's been almost 25 years.
It has. It has. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like yesterday, right?
It does. It does. But it's a lot of good memories. And I thought I had them on my computer, but I don't. I was going to show pictures of you and I together, but I don't even have them on here, I don't think. But there were some that you sent me, actually.
We'd have to go back to the archives and the little negatives, right? That's how
exactly. Back in the film days. Let me get let's get to know Kerrie a little bit. So why don't we let everybody? I know a lot more about you, but they don't know about you. So let's go back to early stages, early Kerrie. Tell us a little bit where you're born. Give us a little bit about the childhood of Kerrie.
Sure, absolutely. Well, hi guys. Thanks for having me on, John. Gosh, I'm a Canadian. I am from Toronto. I was born in Toronto. I grew up in Milton, Ontario, in the GTA, just outside of the city. Most of my career was there as well, which I'll get more into later. But I grew up in Milton, and I'm like a small town girl, but I love the city, and I was always in awe of the media and, bright lights, big city type of thing. And I think Sarah Lyons is saying hi. Hi, Sarah. I can see. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of where I'm from. And, as a kid, I have one sister. I had my parents. My mom was from Wales and my dad was from Ireland. And my dad still lives in Milton, or in Guelph right now in Ontario. And my sister is there in Milton with my niece. So I kind of grew up in a smaller town, and it's bigger now, of course, and worked a lot of my early days in my university around the Toronto area. And for those people who know, I went to Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, and then I also went to Ryerson Polytechnic University, and that's down in Toronto. And so I basically had a great childhood. I grew up, I was very competitive. I used to be actually a competitive Irish dancer. That for those of you who know me, I was in that for 15 years. I went over to the Worlds 3 times representing Canada. It was a big part of my childhood was competitive Irish dance. And of course, my dad being from Dublin, that's where that comes from. I loved, I was played softball, I volleyball at school, and I was very, very active. And I think that kind of lends to the lifestyle that I've always led, and my kids have today. you know, hence the reason why I'm so busy with work. I just can't stop. I just keep going.
I know that about you. You're a very hard worker. But as a child, were you like into sports too and that, or was it more just dancing, or were you more of an academic?
I'd say both. Dancing was the biggest thing, but no, I was in rep softball for my hometown, and we traveled around, and volleyball at school, and you know, track and field and that type of thing too. But dancing was kind of my main thing. But I've always loved all kinds of dancing, really.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was always very active, and sports were a big part of my life, and always being very active. You know, it's just one of those things, right? Once you kind of are into it, you kind of continue it throughout your life. And with Irish dancing, I used to actually teach too. So when I competed for 15 years, and then when I went off to university, I ended up quitting. As most people do, they leave their sports, you know, to go do their schooling, and I started to teach, and I taught a lot of girls. There's a lot of competitive Irish dancers that I used to compete against who started their own dancing schools, and I started to teach and help them kind of build their schools. And some of them still have their schools today, actually. One of them, frankly, is in Milton. And so, yeah, I used to teach. And then actually, when I started at my first job, I actually went on to do a professional live Irish dance show
Hmm.
at the Royal Alexandra Theatre in Toronto in my 20s. And I came
Yeah.
back kind of out of retirement, and I did that for 3 months full time, and did 7 shows a week. And I got
Wow.
yeah, and I was working full time too, right, at MuscleMag.
Exactly.
So it was like a big deal, but it was great, and it was fun to come back and kind of get back on stage again and get in shape again, and also see some of my old, you know, the girls I used to compete against as a kid. So
Yeah.
it kind of followed me right throughout my 20s, really. But at that time, I was able to make some money from it, which was
Yeah,
nice.
I didn't know you did that professionally like that, because I remember the Royal Alexander, because I remember going to see Phantom of the Opera there. That was there for like 10 years.
Yeah,
Beautiful
well,
theater. And it fits a lot of people in there. So you must have had a lot of people coming to watch you.
yeah, it was called River or Need Fire. Need Fire was the one I was in. It was like a river dance for those who
Okay.
know, and it was on for 3 months. So yeah, I'm very proud of it. It's a big part of my background.
Awesome. And
Hmm.
through school, were you always the type that was like a bookworm, or were you always writing, or was
Yeah.
that something that came on later in life?
Oh, I would say I've always been a writer. I'd probably be more of a writer than a reader, which is
Okay.
funny because most
Hmm.
people would think, well, you probably read a lot of books if you write books. But I must admit, I think I was more of a writer, more of a journaler. I would write down everything, you know, lists. And there's a lot of people that have to-do lists, but I would, you know, cross out the to-do list and make it a, you know, another list and keep going on. I still have a lot of my journals from when I was a childhood. That's what's interesting. I have all my old diaries that I actually used to have like a lock on them, and I've lost the key, but I can open them. And I actually still have them. I should make a book out of them one day. It would be kind of funny. But
That
yeah, I
would be
think
kind of
back
fun.
then, I mean, obviously, whenever, you know, before, you know, social media and the internet and that, I used to just write, and I kept all of them. And I just kind of, it was my outlet, right? Even as a child. I can't remember how young I was when I started journaling, but it's always been a big part of my life. And
Hmm.
I enjoy writing for sure. Definitely.
And was it more just about life stuff, or did you ever get into more fiction type stuff and just have some fun, or um,
Sometimes, I mean, I guess, yeah, I used to make up characters like all kids do, and kind of, you know, maybe you know, fictitious characters of maybe it was me in the future type thing. And I always had these dreams of, you know, moving to New York and running a magazine, and you know, that's kind of, I followed that. But I always had these really, really cool things to aspire to, and I used to, you know, write them all down, and kind of like, it was funny because when you look back, right, there's a lot of things that you look at and you think, wow, like I actually was probably, you know, manifesting some of that stuff at age 5 or 6 or 10,
mhm.
but you don't really realize it at the time. And so that's really interesting. But yeah, I think I was probably always a writer. It was always in my heart anyway. So,
Mhm.
mhm.
So you go through high school, and do you have an idea at that time what you want to be or what you want to do? Did you know that writing had something to do with it, or were you still just one of those ones like my daughter was, where grade 12 she still didn't know what she wanted to do with her
Yeah.
life?
Well, I didn't know that I wanted to go into media just yet.
Okay.
I don't even know if I really understood what media was. I mean, obviously, there was the news on TV, but I didn't realize there was, you know, magazine or print journalists. Not really at that time, but I always loved writing. I used to, you know, I got the English award in grade 8. I mean, I was always a writer in some way. I didn't mind writing essays. I know there's people that hate that, but I wasn't so much the math person. It was just
Mhm.
not really me, and I preferred writing. the research side of things and just kind of putting your thoughts on paper and or poems too. I like poems, and I've written quite a few poems as well. So, but graduating from high school, when I went to Wilfrid Laurier, I actually went there in political science, funny enough. So that's my undergrad is actually political science, and my minors in communication studies. And at first, I thought maybe I'd want to go into law or something like that, or writing about law, or reporting in the newsroom or in the courtroom. Wasn't really familiar with all of the media jobs. And I think that was what kind of came to me during university time, was because I was exposed to media studies classes. And then I took a few of those in my communications undergrad, and I learned that you can actually get jobs writing for the media and writing magazines, and really helping people through the written word in some form. And I also learned that it didn't all have to be so serious, hardcore hitting news either, right? It could just be stuff that we wanted to read for our leisure, or that we wanted to read to learn something and to be coached or educated. So that kind of exposed me to that. And then that's how eventually I graduated from Wilfrid Laurier. And then I went on to Ryerson in Toronto, which is where I basically did a graduate program there in journalism, and I had to apply, and I got accepted. I can't remember how many applied, but I know there was only 150 that got in, and out of thousands, and I had to do this whole big thing. I actually had to write a story about me in third person, and that was part of the portfolio you had to do, and it was kind of fun to do that and explore that. And then I went to there, and at Ryerson at the time, I'm not sure how the program is now, but you could either major in broadcast journalism, print journalism, or in magazine. And I chose magazine. I think I've always liked the glossy side of magazines. But, it's just different than a newspaper. I just think it was pretty, and I love to have the glossy magazines in my hand. So I went that route. And that's what I did for 2 more years. And so altogether, I did 6 years of school, and it led me to basically my first job. So,
and then luckily that was first job was somewhere that I was, because that's how we got to meet, of
that's
course.
how we met.
Because I had been working there since 1992, and then I think it was 98. You said you started working
Yeah.
for MuscleMag.
Yeah. So I graduated in 1998 from journalism school. I was an official, professional journalist, and I was actually already doing some part-time work actually at the time for a magazine called Hot Toronto magazine, and even Wow Mississauga magazine. Isn't that funny? That goes way back. And that was my first kind of boss before Bob. Joey C was his name. He's still around today. And anyway, he got me a little bit into the entertainment industry. So I used to go and cover a lot of the really cool things that were happening around Toronto at the time. And that exposed, I did that actually part-time. And I was also an entertainment reporter on CFRB radio.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and a couple of other spots like that. And I did something called the sizzle sheet, which was at the time, it's really dating me now, but we used to fax, this is before newsletters. We used to fax a sizzle sheet by Kerrie out to all of these kind of subscribers. It was really funny when you really think about it, but they were faxed out to people. So I did that part-time during school. And then, of course, I landed my job at MuscleMag, and I was thrilled. I was just thrilled to basically get into a magazine. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're coming out of school, you just want to get into the profession that you've been trained for.
Definitely.
And originally, I thought I'd maybe go into fashion or into beauty journalism. But the fitness magazines came to me, and I was like, well, I really want to start. I'm this guy who interviewed me, Bob Kennedy, was just so welcoming at the time, and he wanted to give me a chance, as he does a lot of people, and he hired me. So I was hired on as assistant editor of MuscleMag. And MuscleMag, of course, is a bodybuilding magazine, and it was at the time, it was one of the biggest ones, of course, in the market. And I knew that I didn't know anything about bodybuilding, though, which was the crazy part. But you know what? There you are. That's Bob and I, Robert Kennedy, and he's passed away now. But I worked for him for almost 9 years or something like that. And he really gave me my start in the industry for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. He gave me I didn't know anything about the bodybuilding industry at all. And I actually answered an ad on the board in Brampton there. I was looking for a job, and I answered an ad, and it was for a driving job for a company. I didn't even say the company. And I went, and it was Bob Kennedy that was looking for somebody. And I did my interview, and he actually hired me and it was on the August long weekend. He didn't realize that that Monday was a holiday, and they actually told me, okay, can you start Monday? I said, yeah, I'll be there. Of course, I show up and nobody's there.
Nobody's there. He probably did that on purpose to test you. That's what he did. I'm
Could
sure.
have been, because then, of course, Trudy, who used to work there, and that she showed up to get some extra paperwork. She's like, "Did he tell you to start today?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "No, you don't start till tomorrow."
That's
So I ended
amazing.
up going home and then starting the next day. But they ended up paying me for that day. So
Oh, there you go.
that's
Yeah.
what MuscleMag was like. So
Yeah, and it's crazy because, of course, with MuscleMag being bodybuilding and very kind of niche market, and it had huge, obviously readership, mostly male, obviously at the time, and me thrown into that, I didn't know anything about it, but of course, he gave me all this great responsibility, even as assistant editor, to do all these star profiles. So, one of my first star profiles for MuscleMag was Frank Seppi.
okay,
And yeah, he's a huge name back then and still is now in the industry. And, he was really, he was really somebody who I thought was great. And I flew to New York to interview him. And I just think it was wonderful because Bob really gave me my opportunity. And
Mhm.
he knew how green I was,
Yeah.
you know what I mean by green. I didn't know anything about the industry. And he just threw me in and he was like, go for it, do it. And so, yeah, I interviewed him and Victor Martinez and Ronnie Coleman and all these big names. And, some of them were just starting out, some of them were
Mhm.
already pros, but it really gave me my kind of tenacity in journalism. And I think that's one of the biggest things I can kind of give to Bob now is that I've moved on from obviously bodybuilding and everything. But I think that, some of the situations that he put me in regards to
Mhm.
interviewing people who I didn't know anything about, it really made me a stronger interviewer. And it really made
And you
me,
were assistant editor at that time,
I
correct?
was only assistant editor. Now there
Yeah.
wasn't a huge masthead, a lot of people, but
Mhm.
we had our roles and he still gave me
Yeah.
a lot of, things like that to do. And I
He was
interviewed.
that type of personality because that's how I
Mhm.
got. He's the one who got you into your first job. That's how I began photography, was through Bob,
Yeah,
because I wasn't going to be a
yeah,
photographer at that time. I knew nothing about photography, but he was a photographer himself and an
right,
artist.
right.
And he's the one who I would do bodybuilding shows or something. He'd say, "Oh, you need a here you go." He'd give me his like $3,000 lens and say, "Here, you can use this."
Yeah.
Like that was just the type of guy he was.
Yeah, and I think everybody who kind of worked at Muscle Mag and Arcade Publishing, throughout the years, and I left, and there was several that stayed on for longer and stuff. And I think that everyone just has that feeling of Bob was that guy who just gave us a chance, and a
Mhm.
lot of us a chance, and he just really trusted us. So it was wonderful. And I think, I mean, he came to my wedding in Bahamas.
Yep.
Like we were a family there. I mean, I must admit we really were. And so, I interviewed all these big guys and that, and he really let me kind of start to shine. And I think, and then also then, he wanted to start, this is how I kind of moved into the next publication there. So he wanted to start a men's kind of more mainstream fitness magazine, which was, something that, I thought, wow, what an opportunity to start a magazine with Bob. And so he did. He made me the founding editor and editor-in-chief of American Health and Fitness. And there it is. And that's Montel Williams. And I interviewed him back then in the day. And I was even a guest on the Montel Williams show for that too. And I judged a weight loss contest on the
Mhm.
show. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, he gave me this opportunity to start this, celebrity kind of men's fitness magazine, the first of
Sure.
its kind. And he allowed me to do that. So I did that for 5 years. So I was still
And
under
wasn't
the,
it called at first AHF, or did they shorten to that later?
yeah, it was at first, but well, AHF actually came afterwards because
Okay.
once the name got like, it became the acronym.
Mhm.
But AHF was exactly how we kind of ended it. And
I
then
guess it was his kind of answer to, what was it? The one
then
that Weeder had, Men's Health and Men's
yeah,
Fitness.
yeah, and then ultimately this one became Maximum Fitness, right? And that was after I left.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it was a really great experience. We shot a lot of and interviewed a lot of celebrities at the time, and fit celebrities like in Hollywood. And so we flew to California and did a lot of our shoots with all the big name photographers. And it was a really big another building block of my career to
Mhm.
be able to start that magazine under Bob Kennedy. And then it was 5 years later. I mean, we're talking, yeah, like 5, 6, 7 years, almost. Well, no, maybe not. Maybe, yeah, about 6 years into my career there. And he approached me about becoming the editor in chief of Oxygen. And so it was still under his umbrella company. Um, and that there actually was my very first Oxygen issue that I was editor-in-chief of. I was really
Okay.
excited. And, you know, it's just, I don't know. It just, you know, it's kind of one of those things where it's very nostalgic for me.
Hmm.
And what's ironic is that gal right there, who I'm still friends with on Facebook, Devana, she actually was on my very first cover of Oxygen. And guess what? She was on my very last Oxygen of cover, or Oxygen.
Oh, there you go.
Well, how crazy is that? And I should have
Exactly.
even, I'll have to send it to you after this, John, because she was on the last one that I left with as well.
Well, I don't know if you remember it, but there was one time when I was up for a cover of Oxygen, one of my pictures that I shot, and it
Yeah.
was of a shot I did in California of a young lady named Brandy Hale.
Oh, yeah.
And you had picked it and you wanted
Yeah.
to use it, and it was up against and I told the story to Monica once
Mhm.
because it was up against a picture of Monica Brandt, and you had it down to the two of them, and you gave
Yeah.
them to Bob and said, okay,
Yeah.
which one do you want? You didn't tell him who the photographers were or anything like that. And
No.
I don't think it was till about a year or two later I told him the story that he found out that the one he didn't pick was my shot. He ended up going with
Oh.
the Monica Brandt shot. I think it was an Alex Ardante shot where she had the rollerblades over her shoulder,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's the one that beat out my that was my one chance to get an Oxygen cover, and it beat it out. But I came in the top two, so
there you go. And that's a great story. Yeah. So Oxygen was my kind of next big, well, it was a big thing. And it was big also because it then brought me and introduced me to the female fitness world.
mhm,
So the two magazines prior were male or more dominated, and the audience that I was writing for was men mostly. So I
mhm.
had to shift gears, and then obviously became the editor in chief of Oxygen, which again is kind of one of my claims to fame, if you will. It's one of those things I really talk about when I'm interviewed, and you know, it was a really big part of my career as well. So it was another big building block, and I have to thank basically Bob for that too.
No, that's awesome, and
Yeah.
it's funny because I was looking while you were talking, and if people are wondering why my eyes are wandering, I got you guys down here on the production, so I'm watching Kerry over here. I've got another screen going here with all the graphics and everything going on, and I got things going on down here. But I came across this that I just before we go move on, I had to show it, of course,
Okay.
because we did talk about it a little bit. Actually, that's not the one I wanted to do. We will do. I think this one will be a little bit better, and we'll see if I can find it. There we go.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And so there's one there. That was at, I believe, the Arnold Classic.
I think it was in
And I think
Columbus,
you're AHF.
Ohio.
I don't know if you were with MuscleMag or AHF at the time, because there's Pam who was with
There's
Oxygen at the one time.
Pam. Yeah, so I was her. Yeah, I was after that. So there I am. Oh my goodness, it's a
Right there.
long
There
time
you are
ago.
right there. And
Yeah,
there's me in the background with my
yeah,
camera. You can't see the camera. I
crazy.
actually had hair a little bit back there.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean that's the old crew, right? Like that was
Yes, that's
way back.
the old
Yeah.
crew. That was probably around, I'm guessing, late 90s, early
Yeah.
2000.
You know what? One day on this show, or this, you're gonna have to do like, you know, get a few of us on and do like one of those square things, almost like the Family Feud thing, and we're gonna
I
have
think that would be very cool.
really
Very cool. Well, who
fun.
knows? Maybe one day we'll be able to do this show in person. We'll fly everybody in
Yeah,
and we'll just do it in person.
that would be great.
So, but now moving on, now you're in the Muscle Mag, you go into American Health and Fitness, you're doing awesome. Then you become the editor in chief of Oxygen magazine,
Yeah.
and then after Oxygen, you end up leaving RK Productions for a while, and
Yeah.
you go into another magazine out of the Toronto area.
Yeah, well, actually, I did. I left to get some event kind of and media relations experience. So I actually left and I went to a company called Fame Media, and I helped them with their athlete relations
That's
and
right. I remember
events,
that now.
right?
Yep.
And I was there for a little bit. It was a contract. And then from there, I actually went into the corporate world to basically hone my communications background. And
Hmm.
I became vice president communications at Stop Pilates. So for anybody who's into yoga and Pilates and kind of knowing that it was they manufactured equipment, Pilates equipment, but they also did all the education for all the instructors worldwide. So I became a corporate gal, but I still had my kind of my hand in the health and wellness industry from that aspect. And I got a
Hmm.
lot of great experience on the marketing and communication side, and went to Germany for some trade shows, and it was great. So, but then I missed magazine world. And so I went back to publications and publishing, and I ended up working at Rogers Media, which is the huge, you know, obviously the big publishing house in all of Canada, and owns a ton of different things right now. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, and I worked for Today's Parent. So I became the executive editor at Today's Parent magazine, which was,
That was one that surprised me, going from bodybuilding and
I
fitness and
know.
and then you go to children.
Well, hey, I had kids. I had young kids, all right, then. So it kind of suited me. It was kind of the right time to do that. And I wanted to get my experience at a large publishing house in Canada. And I did. And so worked down there at One Mount Pleasant in the big Rogers Building headquarters and spent a year there. And it was great. I did a lot of, covering a lot of things oriented towards parents, towards moms. And also I actually spearheaded a big cross-country family fitness challenge. So I actually did bring in a bit of fitness and wellness into that at the time. And we did a whole big thing where all these families got involved, and it was sponsored by Kellogg's. It was a huge thing. So that was part of that. And then, but I mean, during all that time, I mean, it was a very stressful time. I was commuting into the city, and that was kind of one of the biggest things that, you know, when I look back now on the stressors of my life. I was living in Milton, and I was commuting in on the GO train an hour, and then I was taking the subway up another half an hour. So door to door, we were looking at probably 2 hours each way a day. And it was huge. I mean, it was, people go, wow, how could you even do that? And I would never fathom doing that today. But at the time, all the media jobs and the good ones were in Toronto in the city, and I lived in the country, and it's just what people did. And to be honest, in big cities and communities, the commute is kind of a normal thing. So that added on to my stress. And I must admit, being in the public eye for so many years, and when I moved to Rogers, there was a lot of public kind of appearances in that, because it was Toronto centric, and I was on the 6 o'clock news, breakfast television, all those type of things quite often. And I love that. I used to get my broadcast fix there and talk about the magazine and what stories we were doing for different special times of the year. So, but it all added up. I mean, it really did. And it's kind of just part of my story of how I ended up writing my book.
Yeah.
So,
and which brings us to, I guess, to that part where I guess it was somewhere around that time, or not too far from that time, where that's when things started coming to a standstill a bit for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like, you know, all people do, but I mean, moms and busy moms and career moms, we kind of try to do it all. And I wasn't really taking care of my health. And I guess when I say that, I felt like I was, but I wasn't really concentrating on my lifestyle and my lifestyle habits. And I think that's a big thing that we all have to think about. And again, in hindsight, I should have better, knowing that a lot of my background was in the fitness and, you know, the health and wellness kind of industry. So I didn't. And so I was commuting back and forth. I had young ones at the time, 2 boys. And I was just, I don't know, going. And it all caught up to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I started seeing some signs and symptoms of certain things, but I just thought I was run down. Yeah. And at the end of the day, at age 39, I had a heart attack. And that's, it literally knocked me off my feet. And, you know, I tell people today, and I speak a lot about it on the topic about looking after your heart health and, you know, making yourself a priority and learning to slow down. Because at the time I was a living, walking, ticking time bomb. And I didn't know, though, until something happened. So I think just from my own experience, I wanted to really share that. So when all of that happened, and I learned that I actually was born with a heart condition that I didn't know about. I found out all of that at age 39, when my body basically broke down. And I ended up having cardiac surgery and finding out that I had this heart condition that I had to deal with. And I really just had to take a step back and realize that, you know what, I was overdoing everything. And I had too much pressure on myself at the time that, you know, we do every day. I still do today. But I think now I know when I have to realize how to step back and just really make myself a priority. So yeah, it really changed my life, but probably for the better at the end of the day.
Definitely. I mean, you're still here, and that's what counts. But I remember when I was reading your book, because I read this when you first sent it to me, a couple of years ago, I guess it was. And I was lucky enough to get a nice signed copy from you, of course. But I reread a lot of it this week because I wanted to get more refresh on it, because I knew bits and pieces from what I remembered. But when I remember you talking about the whole incident of you having the heart attack, you didn't even believe you were having it. You were just tucking your boys into bed. Like, I don't want to give too much of the book because I want people to buy the book, of course, but
Yeah.
you were basically just tucking your kids into bed, and even they saw it in your face
Yeah.
when it happened. And when you went downstairs, you even told your husband, like, no, I'm okay. And you even went to bed that night
Yeah.
just thinking, oh, everything's going to be fine. And when
Yep.
was it until you actually realized, you know what, I better go see the doctor?
Well, you know what? I even went to work the next day. So, I mean, obviously, there's a ton of different, levels of heart attacks, and
Mhm.
mine was a heart attack, but there's certainly way worse ones. So, what happened was I felt a real um, urge to go to sleep, to basically lay down and go to sleep. It was this huge urge of exhaustion that
Mhm.
came over me. I felt a pain down my right arm, and I know most people would say, "Well, isn't it your left arm that you're supposed to feel something?" I actually felt it on my other side, and that was one of the things that I just couldn't believe. I was like, "Well, it couldn't be a heart, anything to do with my heart or a stroke, because it just doesn't connect with me and in what I
Mhm.
knew it was." But I soon learned, for women, the signs and symptoms are very different from a man. I mean, you can be having a slight heart attack and it could just feel like indigestion, or
Yep.
or it could just feel like your jaw's hurting or your
Yep.
back. And I mean, how many times do we have backaches all the time? So you would never think it. So I did. I just went to bed, and my husband was even like, "Well, should we call an ambulance?" I was like, "No, I'll be fine. I'll sleep it off." And I went to work the next day. I remember being out of breath, but I still felt like it just could not be that. I just didn't believe it. And it really wasn't until a few days later, and it was my mom actually who convinced me to go see the doctor, because I think I had obviously overcome certain things. My heart had, obviously gone into kind of reaction mode to my body. But I felt like I could get through it, and I did, luckily, on my own. But it turns out my issue was an electrical issue. So there's a
Okay.
lot of different things with the heart, of course.
Mhm.
It was an electrical outlet basically that wasn't working well. So they had to go in and do a cardiac ablation, and I ended up having that surgery not long after. And since then, I felt really good. But I
Mhm.
did make some lifestyle changes with that, and I started seeing a naturopath, a nutritionist. I started looking after myself more and really reevaluating my stress levels. And that's why in my book I really talk about not only my experience and what kind of led up to that, but also I have a lot of different exercises in there for men and women, to stop and kind of reflect and to think about their own lives. And
Mhm.
what's really the whole point about it is that I want people to look at their own lifestyles
Yeah.
and to make some changes.
And it's about also us learning how to read our bodies too, because our bodies are always telling us and we don't listen. I know I don't listen a lot. I've got a bit what they call the dad bod, I guess they
Yeah.
call it, and I gotta get I always tell them it's not a dad bod, I have a father figure, or I'm a father figure.
Oh,
So
there you go. I like
that's
that.
what I
I like
call it.
that.
But no, and then what I find funny now, you were saying that even as a child, you would find times where you
Yeah.
were out of breath, things like that, and you would go to the doctor. And if I'm quoting it right here, it said that your doctor told your mom that it's could be just a slight heart murmur, and you'll probably grow out of it. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it wasn't a heart murmur, it was this all along, and
It
it.
was that all along, and it was coming on worse. And obviously, as I got older, obviously it was getting worse. And I think that if it hadn't happened the way it did, it could have happened and it could have been completely deadly if I hadn't have
Mhm.
recognized these signs and done something about them. But yeah, it was funny. I used to have these really bad heart palpitations as a teenager, and I remember I used to work in a flower shop, just part time, and I remember having them, and I could literally see my chest moving like up to 200 beats per minute. Like, it was just crazy. And I used to think, well, I'm not stressed. I used to feel like I was running a marathon, like really bad. And when we went to the doctor, my physician at the time said it was either hormones or just a little slight heart murmur that she'll grow out of. And we never thought of anything of it. And it just got worse as life went on. And with stress, like I said, it just gets even worse. And the palpitations just were severe. And so that's
Mhm.
the cardiac ablation I since had has now rectified that, because it basically severed or ablated one of the pathways where the electricity wasn't going correctly to my heart. So I feel way better now. But it just goes to show that you never know how your heart is going to react to different stress levels in your life.
And
So
luckily, it wasn't as more severe as you
yeah.
had thought, because you might not have made it through that to that next morning. You could have not woke up. So, and I think, like you said, I find a lot more women these days, with a lot of the women in business now and the empowerment of women, which I think is amazing. A lot of women are taking on more stuff than they used to in the past. It used to be, of course, back in the 70s and the 80s, the women are at home, the men are out working, or when the women were starting to work, like when during your era there.
Yes.
It was still, and to an extent, I guess, male dominating a lot of industries still, but women are taking on more,
Mhm.
on top of a family and that. And I think even in yours, you have these points here, like it can happen to anybody, but any woman, really. I mean, it says here, a woman who does too much, tries to be everything to everyone, works hard and keep it together, puts pressure on yourself to be successful in the workplace and at home. Because I do find that, unfortunately, these days women do find that they have more pressures than men, and it's not fair. It's not the way it should be. Women are breaking out, and I think it's about time too. I think you guys are doing amazing with it. People don't want to disappoint. They don't want to show weakness. um, don't know how to say no. That was probably your biggest thing too. And you're like me in that way. You don't want to say no to anybody, or simply don't want to ask for help.
Yeah,
And
and those are all, so that's how I wrote my book. My book is like an easy read. It's like a
mhm,
guidebook. It's 130 pages. It's something that was very reflective for me. I talk about my journey, but then I also have all these tips in there in regards to, things that I learned and I noticed in myself, of all these things that I am, and these may have been things that contributed to my heart issue, and they could potentially help someone else if someone reads them. So yeah, I mean, believe me, John,
mhm,
I still have to remind myself, I go, go, go now. So it's not like I've made a complete 360 where I'm now like, don't do as much. I actually do just as much, just different things, but I know when to slow down. And I think,
mhm.
recognize that if I'm not feeling great, I have to make a shift. So, but yeah, all those points like you just brought up from my book are very important to me, and they've helped some women and men along the way. And learning to say no is a huge thing. Like, I think it's just so important. I have a whole chapter in there on that, about how you have to really evaluate who you're saying yes to and
Mhm.
why. And even if it's your friends or family or spouse or kids and you have to say no, I think it's just important because you want to be the best version of yourself. And if you
Yeah.
don't do that, and here I am saying this again, and it's reminding myself to do the same thing because I'm just as guilty of it. But
Yeah.
again, that's the reason I wrote the book, was to also remind myself.
No, but it's
So,
very true. It's very, very
that's,
true.
yeah, there it is. Yeah. And
So
mhm.
going with the book there, you named it again, My Heart, Myself. So what was the meaning behind that?
Yeah, well, it was my heart and it was about me. I think that women in particular don't, they don't allow themselves to be able to think about themselves, and because they feel selfish, where they feel selfish when they, think about themselves slowing down or saying no to an obligation or something. And like I said, I'm my own worst enemy in this. So I really am. But yeah, that's what that means. My heart, myself. When I was naming the book, I actually self-published this, and I wrote it, edited it, and got it out there. I had a designer just help me with the front cover, but that is me, of course.
Mhm.
But I sent out a couple of titles to my close, like, girlfriends and my sister, and got them to kind of vote on the title, and that was one of the top runners. And I think it was just something that resonated with a lot of women. So my heart, myself. And it's, it's 10, there's 10 signs in there that you need to slow down.
Mhm.
And it's basically a book for women who do too much, which is really everyone.
Yeah,
So
it's very
yeah,
true. It's
yeah.
very true, and it is. It's a big thing, and of course we know why you wrote the book. You want to help it, but it's a lot of times you get something like this where it's something very personal to you, and you're afraid to explain, like just put yourself out there and show your vulnerability to other people. What was the reason for writing this? Did you feel like, I shouldn't be throwing this out there, or who's going to listen to me? I'm just one person. Why would they listen to me? I'm not a
Well,
doctor.
it's really an interesting story because, to be honest, I had actually gone out with my story before I published the book. And what's really interesting about that is that I was working, obviously, at Rogers Media, and Chatelaine is a huge women's publication in Canada. And the editor of Chatelaine at the time heard about my story because I was working when this all happened, and she was like, "You have to share this story in Chatelaine magazine." And I was scared to death to do that because I think it really, again, to your point, John, it just made me feel like I was not as strong of a person if I was to share this in public. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like, if I shared my health woes or my health issue, that potentially I would be judged, or potentially I wouldn't seem as strong as I maybe looked like I was in the media. Right. So I was very, very nervous about that. And I said I wasn't going to. She hounded me and she asked me for about 3 to 4 months. And she basically said, if you don't share this story, think about how many women you're not going to be helping in the long run. So that editor's name was Lori Jennings, and she's now actually at Good Housekeeping in New York, funny enough. But she was a good friend, and she ended up convincing me, and I ended up publishing my story first in Redefining magazine. So that was kind of my biggest, it got out there. And as soon as that happened, basically the feedback came pouring in of all positive to Chatelaine and to Rogers and today's Karen, and everyone was like, wow, if it can happen to her, it can definitely happen to me, kind of thing. And it was really from that point, John, that I thought, okay, now I really have to share this on a larger scale, because I just knew that it was just worth sharing. And I think it also made me feel good to help other people, but it was kind of like something I'd been holding in, so then it relieved some stress in me. So that's kind of why I ended up sharing it. And then I ended up journaling it. And, it took me a little while to write it, but it was very therapeutic. And I really wanted to get it out there. And actually, funny, I help people get their own books out now. That's what I do now for a living as well. So I help other people share their stories, no matter what they are. They don't have to be heart related. And because it makes me feel good to help them, but also it helps them help others. And I think that's kind of the whole point of storytelling nowadays too. So very proud of myself, but I'm proud of everyone else who has ever, decided to share their story as well. So
And that brings us, of course, to your publishing there and that with your Red Lilly. So that's and I know you answered it already, because I know Kat on here was wondering if you did you publish it, or did you go through a publisher, your book, and you already said that you published it yourself.
I published it myself through self-publishing. I have it up on Amazon. I did in Barnes and Noble and all the different great places. And I even had my launch party at Chapters in Milton and stuff. And I took the ball and ran with it, but I did it all myself. And
you did it the right way, because I remember Robert Kennedy telling me the story about how when he first published MuscleMag, he forgot to get a distributor. And so all these skids and boxes of magazines, all these hundreds of boxes, ended up at his house. And he said his whole kitchen and living room were just filled with these boxes. And he had to get a distributor to distribute all his first issue of MuscleMag. So luckily you didn't run into that little issue.
No, and I think I have a really good, so it's one of the things I do today, just to answer Kat's, I help people do this, and I have a lot of means to help that now, and I even ghostwrite books for people as well. So, I mean, we can talk about that more, but no, I self-published it. There was a lot of reasons. I'm an editor and a journalist by trade. I didn't really want to hand it over to another editor at a traditional publishing house just to change my whole story around, when really I was the one telling it, and it was just a personal decision. I'm so glad I did, though. And I did all my marketing and my promotion and also my media on my own, and I just pitched lots of different media outlets, and I was on The Social in Toronto, and so many different things, and I'm still promoting it today. And I wrote it a few years ago, but it's still relevant today, and it's really leading the charge. So hopefully I'll make a difference in someone's life.
Exactly. And they can always go, this is RegularlyLife.com.
Yes. Yeah.
So what would they find if they went on here?
Yeah. So if you click the logo there, you'll go right back to the homepage. But RegularlyLife.com is my storytelling platform. It's where I help women and men, but mostly women, share their stories, and they can submit them online on that website. These stories are of struggle to strength, pain to purpose. They all have a meaning behind them. They have a positive message behind them, and I help people get their story out there. It's really a stepping stone for someone who wants to just share their story and see where it goes. And then a lot of people from this have decided to write a book or do something more with it, maybe start their own blog or whatever. But it's given people some confidence, which they may not have had before, to share their story. And I just felt, as a journalist and also someone who could have the means to help people share their stories, because I've been through it, just a platform for them to, share their voice. So that is one of the big things that I'm very passionate about now. It's my passion project. I have my book on there, and I have some other plans for the whole site. That's where you submit your submissions. And right now I have over 150 different contributors worldwide on here who have
Wow,
submitted.
that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's only been a couple years old, and there's my book. My book comes in digital format as well as the hard copy.
And I know Sarah had put the link, I think, to the Amazon.com where you can also buy the book. But I think you told me earlier that they could buy from Amazon and they get it delivered to them, no problem. But if they came here and bought it, you can actually personally sign it to them.
I will personally sign it for anybody who wants to do it this way, and like through RegularlyLife.com, and I will send it to you and I will sign it for you. But if you want to do it kind of maybe quicker because you have Amazon Prime or something, you can go through Amazon.ca and .com. Actually, I'm in several countries, in the UK and Mexico and everything, on Amazon, and they will send it to you directly from there. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's a great book. And I will say, I bought it, even though you mostly wrote it for women. I told you still,
Yeah,
because I wanted to support you. I said, I wanted to buy one. So I
yeah,
paid for my own copy. I didn't get it. You
yeah.
didn't give it to me for free. I went and I bought it. You personally signed it to me, a
Thank
nice
you.
little paragraph there, and they're not going to get, of course, the same signature, of course.
No,
But the one thing I noticed, I think I told you this after I first read it, was yes, it's written in context towards women and more for women. But I mean, being married and having two daughters myself,
yeah,
one's just in adulthood now, she's just getting ready to turn 21, and one's just beginning to become 15. Um, I think men should be reading this book too, because um, I learned a lot out of this. And just when it comes to my daughters and my wife, and signs to look for with them
yeah,
too. And I think it's a very
really.
good book, not just for women to read. I think the men should be reading this book too, because I think it can be very beneficial for men also. So
Yeah, and I mean, exactly. I have had some other men reach out and read it, and actually who have even contributed to my platform here,
mhm,
RegularlyLife.com, and shared their stories. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's a great reminder, like you said, and everybody knows a woman in their life, whether it's a mother or a sister or daughter, like you said, and they can pass along that message, but then they can also take the tips, and I have brain breaks in there as well, like which are reflection pages.
mhm,
You can take those and do them themselves. I mean, you never
exactly.
know when you might need it, or there might be a tip in here that you can use as well. So yes, it's very good for men too. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then I'm just clicking on here, this Red Lily Heart Supplement. What is this all about?
So yeah, and my husband and I met through the sports nutrition world, and
Mhm,
Craig,
I
John.
do.
So yeah, and so we met a long time ago, and he was working at Muscle Tech at the time, and I was at
That's where I
Oxygen.
met him, because I was shooting for
Yeah,
Muscle Tech a lot of times.
yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things that it just kind of, meant to be, and we've been together a long time, and so he's got his own supplement company now, and so when all this happened with my heart, and he had a heart attack too. There's a whole other segment for you, but his was massive.
Yeah,
But
we might have to get him on the show one day.
you should, you actually should.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we decided under the Red Lily arm here that it was really important not only to obviously read a book, and I feel like my book really calls to that mental health side too of heart health, right? Because it's getting your mind in a place where you can accept the fact that you need to slow down, make yourself a priority, and listen to your body. And then I have this supplement here. It's all natural, vegan friendly. It's a heart supplement, which is obviously going to help with blood pressure, and help you basically, or your overall heart health. It's a
Mhm.
wellness vitamin. And so I think it's one of those things that goes hand in hand, right? Like there's the physical side, you have to look after your nutrition, your supplementation, all of that type of thing. And then, of course, there's the mental side. And all of this adds up to your overall wellness, and looking after not only your heart, but also your health. And I think,
Mhm.
and that's why we launched that. That's actually available on Amazon as well. And I actually have an Amazon page myself. It's amazon.com/Red Lily. I don't know if
Oh,
you've
okay.
seen that, John, but on there is kind of everything that you can get under my umbrella. And yeah, so it's kind of one of those things that it goes hand in hand. I think it's one of those, really good product that kind of really helps you kickstart the day, and level out all your metabolism.
And if they go to redlilymedia.com, is it basically the same information, but it just sends you to different avenues, or?
Yeah. So that's a whole other thing. Lilly Media is my media company, and it's
Okay.
basically where I extend all of my professional writing and editing services. And, I lead out into, my store. And also I'm going to be launching some courses in the near future, some writing courses, and kind of under that umbrella. And that's where you can learn about my book publishing offerings and my ghostwriting, and everything I pretty much do professionally. You can find under RegularlyMedia.com.
Very cool. And that's where, of course, you're going to be helping me hopefully in the future, because we've
Yeah.
been talking about me writing a book for a long time, but
Yeah.
just never got into it. Now that brings us, I know we got about 10 minutes ago, but I don't want to, I want to get into what you're doing now, because I
Yeah.
mean, on top of Red Lily, I mean, Red Lily is enough, I mean, for anybody. I mean, I could see some people saying, okay, I'm doing this, I'm not doing anything else, but you're, of course, the go-getter. You're the one that's the reason why you wrote the book is because you're not satisfied. You want to go further. So now you've got like 3 different magazines on the go.
Yeah. Well, I
And of
mean,
course,
hey,
this brings Sarah in there, who's watching us here too.
I
I'm gonna bring
know.
her
I'm
in
going
here.
to say that. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, again, I'm a creative person. I've been in journalism for 25 years, love the written word. And I mean, anywhere where I can help someone, with their brand or their business and share their message is kind of what I love to do. And so so we moved to the States. I'm actually here in Denver, Colorado. So we never got to that. We moved here, the whole family, for business, for adventure, and I'm in Denver, and I'm the executive editor of Denver Life Magazine, which is a city magazine here in Denver, talking about all the lifestyle and luxury things you can do here in the city. And then I also am the editor-in-chief of Bodyscape Magazine and Epic Fit Magazine. Actually, I have these right here. I don't know if you have pictures of them.
Yeah, and actually, I do have pictures I was going to bring up here for you of
Yeah,
all of them. I even have today's parent, but I forgot to bring that up last time.
yeah.
But let's see what we got
I
here.
have Bodyscape right here in my hand. That's one of them there. And this magazine, which is a beautiful glossy magazine, is the publisher and the lead photographer of that is a lovely lady called Sarah Lyons Gladman. And I know you're friends with her too. And she's been in the fitness world for a long time, and she's launched that magazine. And it's a beautiful magazine, and it highlights so many different women and men who are really proud about their bodies and work out. And there's a Bodyscape as well. That's one of them. That's one of the ones that I've overseen with Jennifer on the cover. And so she does all the photography, and I actually write all the cover stories. And there's another one, Laura Chow. And so what's great about this magazine and how it kind of differs from some of obviously the magazines I've worked in the past in fitness, is this really gears towards the story behind the model and behind the physical and the beauty and the perseverance in their own stories. And Sarah is wonderful about taking their image and just making them so beautiful and putting them throughout the magazine on these epic kind of photo shoots, in which, funny enough, Monica Brandt also helps as the posing coach on set as well for those, a big name in the industry. And they do these glamorous big shoots, and then I get to obviously interview all the cover models and tell their story. And again, that's where my passion and love for the storytelling side comes in. And I'm the editor-in-chief now, and also the editor-in-chief of Epic Fit Magazine, which is
I don't have a cover of that.
I have it right here.
Oh, there you go, right there. Let me just make you a little bit bigger there. Hold on a second there. Let's bring you in there. There you go.
That's Epic Fit.
That's beautiful.
This one just launched. It's a special issue it's powered basically by Picture Group Photography, which is Sarah's business and her company. And what we do together is we try to basically help people build their brands and build their personas, whether they want to do it for business purposes or write a book. And we come together and have joined forces in a way that we can both do that from our own talents. And so that's what we're doing right now. And so I do Denver Life, and I help Sarah on the side with those. And I do a bunch of other things with some other people in regards to book publishing. And it's just it's everything I love to do all rolled into one. So
and Sarah's amazing. I haven't met her personally yet. One day we will meet. Maybe I'll come and hold like her reflectors or her lights or something for her.
I'm sure she'd love it.
She's probably surpassed me by now. But I met her for the first time, not in person, but online through our mutual friend, Monica Brandt.
Yeah.
Monica started up her program, the Monica Brandt Show. And one of her guests near the beginning there was was Sarah Lyons there. And that's how I got to know who Sarah was and what it was all about. And
Yeah.
when they started showing her photography, I mean, the stuff was just amazing. She's just blows me away with she makes the women look so beautiful and glamorous. And I mean, they already are beautiful and glamorous, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, as a photographer, being a photographer myself, to me, the way I look at it, it's our job to always take the beauty that they have there and just try and enhance it the best way we can, and how to show it off. And she does an
Yeah.
amazing job. And then one thing I love about the magazine is it's not just a digital magazine like most
No.
fitness magazines have gone to.
Exactly.
There's a few of them still out there. MuscleMag and Oxygen, of course, was reestablished again in California there, and they still have a physical magazine. And so, but a lot of them just went digital now. But she said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm bringing out a physical magazine, and I
Yeah,
love that.
and absolutely. And I mean, if anybody's interested in looking at them or buying them, or also, of course, in finding out about ways that they can shoot with Bodyscape, go to bodyscapemag.com, and Sarah will answer all your questions. And if it's just really a great publication that I'm proud to be a part of. And I think a big part of it too is that it's all about empowering the person who's in front of the camera. And everyone, it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter, of course, if you've done competitions or not. It really just depends on whether you have the confidence to get out there and tell your story, and then also be photographed for how well you're presenting yourself to the world. So I think it's amazing. And so I do that as well, and I'm really happy to do that. And we have a lot of really fun things on the go. We're actually doing a huge a photo shoot weekend here in Denver. So if any of my friends are here in Denver, please contact me about it. July 15th to 17th, we're doing a big spectacular photo shoot here, and you can book and shoot and get guaranteed publication in Bodyscape Magazine or Epic Fit. So we're very excited about that too. And Sarah, I'm telling you, she even has opportunities for people to get on Times Square billboards. So please contact her and go to Bodyscape and learn more about that as well. So if you're
I'll have to get her to shoot me then, because then there's nothing like seeing John Butler up on Times
of
Square.
course. Well, hey, why not, right?
That's a way to clear the streets, that's for sure.
No, they're big. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a great opportunity. So I think I just love working with people now who are just really passionate about what they do, just as much as I'm passionate about what I do, and, joining forces any way that we can, and just kind of, I don't know, like just bringing out the best in everyone. So that's what it's all about.
No, definitely. And I think one of the biggest factors we can get from this, it's a quote from your book. It's actually by, I hope I say it right, because if I'm butchering his name, they can come after me. But Soren Kierkegaard, is that right?
Kierkegaard, yeah. Say it times, but yeah.
And it says, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And I think everything we talked about today, that sort of signifies it all right there. I mean, if we could always know what was going to happen ahead of time, we can fix it before it happens.
Yeah. And I mean, also, I think in part of my healing was that I had to reflect and look back on my life. And that's a lot of that I do have in the book. I think it's a healing kind of a technique that you look backwards, you look at where maybe you are too hard on yourself growing up, or stressed out, or maybe it's your background, or maybe where you're from. But at least then you can learn from it and then move forward, and then leave it in the past and make changes for the better. So that's why I included that quote in my book. I just thought it was really important to me, and hopefully people can learn from it, that you can move on from anything, and you're also not your past. So hopefully that'll help people kind of see through the struggles and get to the other side.
I agree with you totally.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I had you on here. Like I said, when I first started the whole planning of this, I had you in mind for this show, because there's been a lot of, the last 2 years has been hard on everybody.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is with the mental health. We needed to get some positivity in there. And I think a story like yours, it's not just what you went through, but it's how you got through it, and what you're doing now to show that no matter what happens, no matter how far down we go, there's always a way we can get back up to the top again. And I think you're just amazing. I think people can learn a lot from you. I'm happy we've been friends this long, and I see us being friends for another 20, 30 years.
Absolutely.
If I'm around by that time.
Yeah, me too, but hopefully. But yeah, thanks so much, John. And we've gone through a lot. And yes, my story is just one of a million. Of everybody has a story. That's kind of my purpose, of helping people bring that out. And I hope that in some way it'll just maybe help and make one person just kind of, look, Sarah's saying, let's do it, John. She wants to, she wants to photograph you. So, but yeah, I think it's just one of those things that I can give back in some way, and hopefully I'll maybe help change a life. So
No, I'm glad. I know you will, because I know a lot of my listeners here that were watching, they were loving what you were saying. I know my friend Kat Ward, she had to leave about 10 minutes ago, she said on
Yeah.
here, but she was already on the webpage and buying your book right there, I think.
Oh,
So
awesome.
she's ready to buy your book. So there you can change one more life right there. And that's, I think, what it's
Good.
all about. Even if you could just change one person for
Yeah.
the better, that's what it's all about.
That's
So
what it's about. Exactly. So yeah, if anybody wants me to help them, like get published or, at least share your story or help you write a book, please contact me and I'd love to do it. I would. So
that's awesome. Well,
yeah.
thank you very much for coming. And until next time, be watching, because we're doing this the second Tuesday of every month. We're going to have a new person on here, and it's people from all different lifestyles. I've got a good next couple shows coming up that we'll be letting you know who's coming on soon. But we've already got 2 people lined up that I think you're going to learn a lot from. And maybe we'll get Craig on here one day. We'll have to
Yeah.
talk to him, because I think he has a good story to say too.
Yeah,
Um,
he does. Thank you so much, John. It's been a pleasure, and hi to all of your fans.
And until next time, remember, if anybody asks, say the butler did it.